Hey folks, welcome back to Only Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk about Mirror's Sight, the fifth book in the Green Rider series by Kristen. And overall, this is an okay book that has a few things that I liked about it, but overall, I'm not quite sure it worked for me. There's a few things in here that that set aside personal preference. I think they raise some issues with the series, so we'll get into that in a bit. First of all, what is this book even about? So it picks up directly after the events of Blackfield, the fourth book in the series, and we find Carrigan thrown into the future, a fair, quite a bit far into the future, and as a result of that, she finds herself in a drastically different time in terms of how the world operates, technologically, socially, these kind of things. On top of that, as she discovers more of what the past of how this world existed and what the past was like, and so we find out that a whole new threat arose in the time that she was basically over the course of the time skip. A whole new threat arose, and it's one that has its seed set within her time. So the question now is, can Carrigan even return to her present timeline? And if she can return to it, is she even capable of stopping the rise of this brand new threat? So, first of all, I want to talk about what I actually liked about this book. So it was fun to see how the way that this world developed over the time period that was skipped. There were some technological advances, not as many as you would like, but given the nature of the political setup in this brand new setting and all of that, it makes sense that there wasn't as much progress as you would expect, given the length of time that was passed. In addition to that, there were some really cool changes in terms of just how society operates and these kind of things. That's drastically different from what Carrigan left. That it was interesting to read. Like it was fun to see the way the world changed, but this whole examination, it's not like this trip to the future was used as a way to like explore any real thematic work or anything of that sort. It was just like a cool what if scenario, basically. It was really interesting to get like a forward facing view, you can say, of some of the characters and events of Carrigan's present timeline, like the way that their legacy kind of eventually grows in what becomes the future. So that was kind of like that kind of stuff made the book interesting to read. Setting that aside, Carrigan, of course, is a very magnetic character to read about, and it's in this new situation that she's in. There are some parts of it that were fun to read, like her the way she interacts with the people of this present timeline, the technological changes, and these kind of things. And also the way that this society works, the way that it changes, and how different it is from her time. Like that kind of stuff, it was fun to read. And of course, there's the whole dynamic between her and a new love interest that appears, because of course a new one appears. This is Carrigan after all. And the cool thing about this one is that he proves to be the most consequential one to date, especially given the way things were in Carrigan's present timeline. Like, to see this one step in this way and play out in this way was really interesting. It's going to be very curious to see what the ramifications of that of these events are going to be in the succeeding books after this. So all of that was kind of the cool stuff to read about this book. Let's get to the things that I really didn't like about it, or at least irritate, or maybe not necessarily didn't like, but it certainly didn't work for me. First and foremost, time travel. I dislike time travel in books, mainly because most authors can't use it in a good way. It's oftentimes when it's involved, when it's introduced into story, it creates major plot holes, and so most of the time, authors, the way that authors deal with these plot holes, especially in fantasy, is to just wave it away with magic, because magic can be used, and that's exactly what happens in this one. It quickly becomes apparent that there are some constraints on Carrigan in this new timeline. Like, she can't be exposed to certain things. She can't learn certain things, and so it's quite clear that something has set constraints on what she's allowed to do in his future, and that honestly just feels like a way to kind of use time travel in a way that it won't break the it won't create the plot holes that are so very much inherent in this kind of thing. And of course there's how that ultimately plays out, and what happens with Carrigan's experience in the future and all of that. I understand as it's eventually revealed how Carrigan got to the future and these kind of things, like you understand why this was put in place, but it's still like I said, it comes right back to magic. Magic is it's just used to deal with the complications of it, and for me that's generally just a sign of it being handled lazily. So there's that. The second thing I didn't like about this book is that we go off, it feels like a very tangential read. We spent 4 books at this point like focusing on one particular enemy, one particular conflict. The face of that enemy changed, which was fine, but the nature of that conflict itself didn't. And in this book, that's a completely different. Like we find that that threat in the future, we find out that threat was pretty much unceremoniously shoved aside by this brand new terror that arose, and now we have this brand new terror to deal with that Carrigan could potentially have to face with in the future in her present timeline. And so because of that, like it kind of invalidates, in many ways it feels like it just invalidates the tension and the gravity of the previous 4 books, because like what was the point of all that if it just gets shoved aside and we have this other thing to deal with that was hinted at in some of the previous books, but then it becomes so much more of a dire threat than whatever else than what she was facing in the previous 4 books. So between the different nature of that, and like the book just reads like a tangential side quest, and that didn't quite work for me. Now that being said, there are some series out there that I really enjoy that are pretty much a series of standalone books. Like Malzahn is a pretty good example. But that being said, this is the 5th book in the series, and we've had 4 books dealing with one conflict. So to suddenly throw this in the middle, it just didn't really work for me overall. Which is why, like, when I say it didn't work for me, like, it was an okay book, because it is a lengthy book, by the way. This is a fat book. It is a lengthy book, it is a lengthy read, and I just don't feel like it really progressed the major conflict that we've been following so far. It didn't really progress. It actually did not progress that conflict whatsoever. So that kind of irritated me. It reminds me, in many ways, it reminds me of the worst of the Wheel of Time slump. So yeah, those are kind of my big issues with the book. But overall, it was still like an okay reading experience, because Kristen is a very good writer, and Carrigan is a fun character to follow. It's just that, like, when you take a step back and look at the grand scheme of things and where this book fits into the overall series, it just doesn't feel like one that was. It just doesn't really feel like one that I enjoyed overall. Like I would say that of the 5 books that I've read in the series, this is the one that I've liked the least. Even if it does have some cool stuff sprinkled in here and there. So yeah, that's my I guess that's my take on Mirror Sight. Yeah, if you made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.